Hello and welcome back to Canada's Parliament. It is a pleasure to be here with you in extraordinary times as we continue to battle this pandemic. I think to start, I want to take a moment to reflect on what we were able to accomplish in the prior session. It is because of cooperation and goodwill and using reason that we saw an incredibly productive start to this Parliament that I'm hoping to continue. Certainly our ability to pass the hybrid provisions, and it's one of the things that I talked about when we started the last session, was we didn't know where this pandemic was going to go, and we needed to maintain flexibility. And obviously, as we've seen Omicron unfold, the provisions that we have to operate flexibly and to be able to use these hybrid provisions are exceptionally important. We also, of course, were able to get all committees in place and chairs. We were able to place a ban on conversion therapy. We have legislated sick leave and bereavement leave. We introduced and passed legislation to protect healthcare workers from harassment. And of course, we were there with dollars and support for businesses and individuals that were continue to be affected by shutdowns related to the pandemic. And all of that is to say that Parliament has worked exceptionally well, and I'm here to say that it's going to continue doing that. And I'm going to take a moment to talk about what's happening outside right now as parliamentarians and others are having difficulty getting into this building, as people who are doing their work are being accosted, whether or not they're journalists, whether or not they're small businesses, whether or not they're homeless shelters, seeing imagery of Nazi imagery, seeing our national sites being desecrated. This is not how we do discourse. It's exceptionally disappointing, but none of us are going to be intimidated from doing our work in this place. Parliament is here to continue to focus on the priorities Canadians expect us to. It's understandable that people are frustrated, but we use our freedoms to help and uplift others. Freedom is, of course, about agency, but what we do with that agency is fundamentally important. And I think that the tone that we had in the previous Parliament is one I want to return to in this country, in this Parliament, because, of course, we have a very busy agenda ahead with a great deal that is expected on all of us to accomplish, and that responsibility is shared collectively in a minority Parliament, not just with the government, but, of course, with opposition parties. And in the 15 weeks that we're going to have between now and the end of the summer, I want to take a moment to talk about some of the major priorities that we're going to be looking at. This is not an exhaustive list, but it gives you a sense of the ambition that we have for this Parliament. And of course, we're going to be beyond this dealing with many items off of the mandate letters, and I'll come in to make these comments in French at the end as well. First and foremost, funding of rapid tests. You will have seen that C10 we introduced today. This is to take from the fiscal and economic update the provisions to provide rapid tests and accelerate them because their need is great and we need to make sure that they're present. We, of course, had the economic and fiscal update that was introduced in the previous session, and we're looking to adopt that. We're looking to move forward with the Online Streaming Act, with official languages reform, with the Budget Implementation Act that will stem from the budget that the Finance Minister will be tabling in the upcoming weeks. We're looking to continue. We've already had 3 days of debate on mandatory minimums in C5. We'll be looking to continue with that to make sure that we deal with problems within the judicial system in that it disproportionately is affecting Indigenous people and Black Canadians. We're obviously going to continue the work on the Parliament of Canada Act to make sure that our second chamber, that Canada's Senate, has an opportunity, given the less partisan structure, that it has the opportunity to make changes that are reflective of that. We're looking at remuneration for Canadian news outlets by digital platforms, strengthening our environmental protection laws, and criminal justice reforms that are related to COVID-19. And as I say, that is not meant to be exhaustive. The mandate letters from ministers outline many other areas. It's simply to give a sense of some of what we're going to be looking at in the coming days. It is clear that this pandemic is not over. Parliament is obviously going to have to continue to be adaptive and flexible to watch how the situation continues to unfold, and that we are providing legislative solutions here in the House. And part of that, as I say, is C10. I really am calling on opposition parties to aid us in getting that adopted as quickly as possible. We've seen tremendous growth in our economy. Canada is in an enviable position with respect to other G7 countries, where we actually have not only recovered the jobs that were lost during the pandemic, but we're actually 107%. We're ahead of that, continuing that economic growth, making sure that as hopefully this pandemic wanes and we're able to return to some sense of normality, that our economic growth continues. We see that what we're doing with respect to childcare is exceptionally important. We've been able to make deals with every jurisdiction. We're looking at Ontario now and hoping for that to be finished, because of course we know how critically that important that is for families and for our economy. We want to continue the fight against climate change. We have an ambitious plan. I mentioned some improvements, legislative improvements, but there's obviously much that we're going to be doing in that area. Safer and more inclusive communities, reconciliation with Indigenous communities, and obviously standing up internationally. And we'll be seeing a take note debate tonight on the situation that is in the Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. Alors, je peux dire rapidement la même chose en français. C'est une journée très importante pour nous tous aujourd'hui. Nous avons eu une séance très productive à la Chambre avant Noël. Et je pense que c'est important rapidement de prendre un moment, de considérer des choses qui étaient adoptées pendant la dernière session parlementaire. Nous avons convoqué tous les comités. Nous avons installé un système hybride, et c'est évident dans un contexte actuel que l'utilisation le système hybride est tellement important quand la situation de la pandémie continue. Nous avons adopté une loi interdisant la thérapie de conversion. C'était une adoption unanime. Nous avons adopté une loi pour le congé de maladie payé et des congés de Dieu pour les gens. Nous avons adopté une loi visant à protéger les travailleurs de santé contre le harcèlement. Nous avons adopté une loi visant à fournir un soutien supplémentaire à travailleurs et des industries touchées par la pandémie. Et les Canadiens et Canadiennes peuvent être fiers du travail accompli par des députés. Et le Parlement travaille. Et aujourd'hui, notre travail, ça continue. Même s'il y a des manifestations, c'est essentiel que les députés n'étaient pas intimidés de continuer notre travail ici au Parlement. Nous avons un programme chargé devant nous. Nous aurons 15 semaines de temps de chambre avant l'été. Il y aura beaucoup de travail à faire. Et je vais prendre un moment de dire avec la collaboration que je pense que les plans agressifs est absolument possible. Alors, nous avons progressé sur les projets de loi importants dans les semaines à venir. Permettez-moi d'élaborer un peu sur ça. Le financement pour des tests rapides qui sont tellement importants maintenant. Le projet de loi C8 avec des mesures pour aider davantage les Canadiens touchés par la pandémie. Un projet de loi sur les diffusions en ligne. La réforme de langue officielle, la loi d'exécution du budget qui providera du budget que le ministre des Finances déposera dans les prochaines semaines. Le projet de loi C5 qui porte sur les peines minimales obligatoires afin que le système de justice ne touche pas de façon disproportionnée les Autochtones et les Canadiens de race noire. Le projet de loi C7 qui modifiait la loi sur le Parlement du Canada afin de refléter la structure moderne et moins partisane de la Chambre haute. La rémunération de l'organisation de presse canadienne par les plateformes numériques, renforcement de notre loi sur la protection de l'environnement et les réformes de la justice pénale qui sont liées à COVID-19. Et ce n'est pas une liste complète. Évidemment, il y a plusieurs choses à faire, mais nous sommes ici pour travailler. Et maintenant, je suis prêt de prendre votre question.
Alors, on m'indique que nous aurons jusqu'à 2h10 pour les questions. I'm told we have until 2:10 for questions. And I'm taking 50% of the questions in the room and on 50% of the questions on the phone. 50% des questions dans la salle, 50% au téléphone. Première question.
Oui. Hélène Buzetti, des Coop de l'information. Mr. Holland, this is a very technical question, but can you explain why we actually need a bill to buy rapid tests? Can we just spend the money?
Thank you for the question. And the originally in the economic and fiscal update, there was contemplation for money for rapid testing. Unfortunately, the need, I shouldn't say unfortunately, there's a need today that exists, and we need to have parliamentary approval for that funding for those rapid tests. And so what we've done is we've extracted that portion from that bill C8 so that we could have an allocation of dollars for that rapid test funding.
To go faster.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think you touched upon it very briefly, but about the asking platforms such as Facebook to finance media. I think that was a promise to have this table in the first 100 days or something. So can you tell us, the deadline, it's coming very shortly. So should we expect to see this bill in the coming days? Like, what can you tell us?
Yes, absolutely. You should expect to see this bill in the coming days.
Thanks.
Hi, Stephanie Taylor with the Canadian Press. You mentioned the convoy outside. Can you let us know, have any of your MPs been prevented coming in the building, accosted, threatened, had any kind of incidents with those in the convoy? We've heard of others, but I'm just wondering specifically for MPs.
The MPs that I've spoken to have been able to access Parliament, of course, on foot, not by vehicle, because the precinct is now completely jammed and you're unable to come in. But I came in this morning without any problems. I think the concern right now is that there have been a number of actions that have been deeply disturbing. And that is unsettling. And I have spoken to a number of members who are deeply concerned, but not deterred from coming in. Let me say that the threats of violence or the intimidation that we've seen of residents or businesses or journalists, that I know for all the people that are elected to serve their constituencies that are coming in here, that we will in no way be deterred by this sort of action. That it is not only counterproductive, I think, to the message that they're trying to talk about, but that there's an understanding that as elected representatives, we have a responsibility to be in this place, and that no form of intimidation will stop us from doing so.
I understand Ottawa Police and local authorities are dealing with the actual convoy and the fact that they're still in Wellington, kind of day 4 into this. But I suppose in your opinion and government opinion, like, how long should authorities give these folks to continue to take up the precinct as they are now? Like, what's the timeline you're hoping that these vehicles are gone by, or what's your tolerance for how long they can stay there?
Well, I think first and foremost, I would ask for some introspection on the part of those that are protesting to think about how their actions are conveying whatever message that they want to disseminate. Right now, this I don't think is working. I think that the reaction to Canadians has been mixed from disgust to anger to frustration to feeling sad that this would happen on our soil. This protest that we saw over the weekend with the actions that have desecrated things that are, Terry Fox is beyond any partisanship, and to see his statue defaced and played games with in the way that it was, to see Nazi symbolism you got to step back and think about how you're delivering your message. Shutting down Ottawa, hurting businesses, impeding emergency vehicles, throwing rocks at ambulances, I was hearing today. This is not endearing your cause to anybody's ears. So I would say we're all fed up with this. We live in a free and democratic society. I believe ardently that somebody should say something that I completely disagree with. But I don't think they're helping themselves, and I think they're only making people more frustrated and more angry, and that's not what we need right now on any level.
Mike one.
Ian Bailey, Globe and Mail. Have you had any discussions with the other parties, your counterparts in other parties about the protest, the impact on them, a joint position or anything like that?
I have. Despite the thrust and parry of partisan politics, there's a recognition of our common humanity here, and this is something that I think, as I've talked to members on all sides, there's been a lot of very negative reaction to. We're watching how this is unfolding and hoping that it will move on to something more constructive and more peaceful and more positive. But we're continuing to have those discussions and talk with one another and monitor it. But at this point, there's been no decision for us to take any action collectively.
What kind of options are being considered as collective?
I wouldn't say, again, I would refer you back to what I said. Yeah. It is my very sincerely held hope that the people that are involved with this protest will reflect upon what message they're sending out and the effectiveness of that message, and realize that this isn't the right way to go and that they need to step back. I fully support dissent. I was in opposition for a long time. I've been in many protests. I've stepped up and I've criticized governments. I've been frustrated and angry by what governments have done. But in a free and democratic society, there is a right and wrong way to do that. And I think that what they will find is that Canadians don't respond well to the things that we've seen over these last few days. I don't think they serve them well. And my preference would be for them to come to that conclusion themselves and comport themselves in a different way.
I gotta go check if there's a question on the phone, operator.
Thank you, merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. And the first question, la première question, Catherine Levesque, the National Post. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi, Mr. Holland. I just want to go back to the bills that are going to be presented. You talked about the web giants, that's coming possibly in the next few days, but there's also the Broadcasting Act, the reform that used to be C-10, which should be tabled before the first 100 days of the mandate. So I wanted to know if it will be presented this week, and if so, are there going to be any changes to make sure that this bill is maybe not as controversial as it was before?
So the Online Streaming Act, the act that will deal with online streaming, will be presented very soon, and the minister will be speaking to that when it is presented in terms of any changes that might be present in the bill.
Okay, great, thank you. And coming back to the convoy, as I saw in the House, there are a few MPs from every party today. Were there any talks about delaying maybe the return of Parliament today because of safety concerns? Is that something that came up?
Absolutely not. There was no consideration of delaying the start of Parliament. I think it's imperative that we continue to do our business as planned. I look at the start of this pandemic in March of 2020, and when things were moving very dynamically, we were able to come together and make sure that after a brief period of time, we were able to adopt hybrid provisions to be able to continue. I think it was incredibly important today, notwithstanding the intimidation, notwithstanding the desecration of national sites, to demonstrate that we will not be deterred from doing the business of the nation, and there was never a moment's hesitation about us being here today.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
Thank you. La question suivante, the next question. Peter Mazariou, The Hill Times. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. I didn't hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, you include the bill to combat online hate speech among that list of priorities. I understand you said it wasn't exhaustive, but I believe that was among the 100-day promises in the Liberal platform. Should we expect to see that soon?
Yeah, so with respect to online harms, there will be more information on that soon as well. I think it's, today I'm talking very broadly to give a bit of a sample of some of what we're dealing with. This isn't meant to be exhaustive, so I understand there'll be specific questions, but I can say that there'll be information regarding online harms very soon.
Okay, so that one probably could be coming in the next few days then?
I think we'll have information on it very soon. I can say that.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
There are no further questions. Nous n'avons plus de questions.
Dans la salle.
Oh, hey. David Thurton, CBC News. Hopefully you could take both of our questions. Just what impact do you think that this convoy is going to have on the in-person work of the House of Commons, especially the Prime Minister? I mean, his office is in the midst of this convoy, whether it's on the Hill or at the Prime Minister's office. It's all within this vicinity. What impact do you think it's going to have?
I think, you know, all of us are reflecting on the state of discourse generally. That one of the things that I said from the onset of the beginning of this Parliament, it was how important it was for us to work collaboratively to find reasonable middle ground, to dial back our rhetoric, and to find a place where we can try to come together. And, you know, I look back particularly at the banning of conversion therapy, where we were able to act unanimously as a House, and I think it was really important. There's great frustration everywhere. Everybody's tired in this pandemic, and that is natural and understandable. But we have to be kind to each other. And in difficult times of crisis, you know, how we use our freedom is exceptionally important. You know, to those that are out there and they're angry at the government, I get it. I've been angry at governments too. But I do worry about that escalation, and I do worry about how our language and our debate here feeds into it. We have to create a thick black line between what is a legitimate grievance or concern to question the government and what is extremist behavior and language. And I think that what we saw in these swastikas and you know, hate and aggression was something that unfortunately exists in our country, but can be given no quarter, and there can be no confusion as to whether or not there is any games that are being played with that. So I think that we have to really separate that out in a very firm way, because it is poisonous, and it is an infection that, once it takes hold, threatens to undermine democracy itself. I disagree fundamentally with Aaron O'Toole and the Conservatives on many things, but Aaron O'Toole is in a neighboring riding to me. Aaron O'Toole is, I know him to be a good man, and our differences do not belong in the realm of vitriol and hate. And so we all need to do more to tamp this down and to treat each other with respect in a time of stress, in a time of crisis, after 2 years when so much has been asked of Canadians, that we really have to watch the way we speak to each other and the way we work in this place.
Some have described yesterday's protests as peaceful. Do you agree? Do you think they were peaceful?
I don't believe that these protests were peaceful. I believe there were peaceful people and well-intending people there. Don't mishear that. But there were many people who came with ulterior agendas and who displayed those agendas in ways that were deeply hurtful. You know, I think we all know that invoking Nazism, invoking racial hatred, invoking these sorts of vile, contemptuous things that we have so hard tried to fight against in so many different iterations is just not acceptable. And I think if you are a peaceful protester, if you're somebody with a legitimate grievance for the government, and you look to your left or your right and you see people using hate and using a language that is incendiary and divisive, that hopefully you take a step back and think, okay, I'm going to try a different approach here. And, you know, I want to be reflective about myself and my own language. You know, I was in opposition for 7 years, and I used a lot of heated language, a lot of fire and brimstone, and I believed every word of it. But, you know, could I have been more tempered in my approach? Did my aggression and my anger in those moments, as rightly as I thought I felt them in those moments, was it productive? Did it move ahead discourse? Did it improve the lives of the people that I was serving? I don't know that it always did. And I think that this is a time for us all to be very reflective, because, you know, we are in a moment of real crisis. This is, people have gone through a major trauma in dealing with this pandemic. Some in ways, you know, I can't even begin to stretch my imagination to imagine. But even people who've had it lucky have gone through something incredibly hard. So we have to be more generous in our language. We have to be more generous in our behavior. That doesn't mean we can't disagree, but it means that we have to be more tempered. And I take that into my heart as we start this session. And I would ask those in the streets in Ottawa, hopefully, to take that into theirs. Not that they can't criticize it, not that they don't have things that need to be talked about, but not this way, and not now, not like this.
Dernière question.
Boris Ledevoir, est-ce que des députés libéraux ont eu du mal à se rendre ici à l'édifice de l'Ouest pour la rentrée parlementaire ce matin?
C'est à cause de la COVID-19, c'est évident que c'est impossible d'avoir le même nombre de députés que normal, mais le nombre de députés ici aujourd'hui, c'est pas une indication de la situation à l'extérieur du Parlement. Alors, il n'y a pas un changement avec le chiffre, avec le nombre de députés ici, à cause de la manifestation, pas du tout.
Est-ce que des députés libéraux ont été intimidés, soit chez eux, soit à leur bureau, ou soit ont été bloqués d'une manière ou d'une autre là, pour venir ici? Absolument.
C'est une situation où l'intimidation est présente, et c'est évident dans les médias sociaux qu'il y a beaucoup d'intimidation, et c'est difficile pour les députés de travailler dans une façon comme ça, et c'est une situation vraiment difficile et tense pour les députés dans leur maison, mais ça, c'est le travail. C'est comme une députée. C'est de temps en temps, la situation est stressante, et c'est le type de stress est tellement moins stressé que des autres types de personnes, particulièrement les personnes qui travaillent sur le front line à l'hôpital. Alors oui, c'est stressant, et il y a des personnes qui menacent le député en ligne, et avec les généraux sens de l'agression à l'extérieur du Parlement, mais on va travailler avec ça. Well, let me be clear. The intimidation is implicit in when you watch videos of people saying, let's make this Canada's January 6th. Let's show these politicians, you know, in whatever various form, use your expletives, use your aggressive, violent language. Let's go to their homes. Let's, you know, block their place of work. Let's, you know, it's even if they don't do it, just the act of talking about it online, you know, is intimidating. But I think, you know, members of Parliament, when you make the decision to run for elected office, you make the decision to put yourself on the front line of public discourse and debate. You know, so we're used to that. I've, you know, in different moments in time in Parliament, I've had death threats. I've had people come to my house. I've had all of those things, and I accept that. I know when I put my name on the ballot. I think what frustrates me is when I see that being done to healthcare workers, when I see that being done to people in homeless shelters. You know, these are not people that signed up to be treated and harassed this way. And so, yeah, it's intimidating, but we deal with it, and we're intimidated in other forms. No, not that I'm aware of. Yeah. Okay, and I apologize. I have to get into question period. Thank you very much.